The warm breeze flowed gently on a peaceful summer day, and the rhythmic sound of typing echoed in the air. Kotoru, a young boy with tousled hair and bright eyes, sat at his computer, relief washing over him as he finally finished his assignment. He leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head, and picked up a book to read. Just as he began to unwind, his phone rang, shattering the tranquility. With a reluctant sigh, he walked toward the sound, grabbing a snack from the kitchen as he searched for his phone. When he finally found it lying on the ground, he answered the call, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Yeah, everything went smoothly with the unpacking," he said, but the unexpected response from the caller caught him off guard. "Great. We're heading to Mio, and we'd love for you to join us." Kotoru's heart sank. He had hoped for a quiet day, but he knew he couldn't refuse. He made his way to Mio, where he met a couple who greeted him with warm smiles. The man handed Kotoru his ticket, and as he turned to hug his wife, Kotoru felt a pang of envy. "Couldn't you have gone without me?" he grumbled, crossing his arms. The man chuckled. "And risk getting lost on the trail? You wouldn't want that, would you?" Kotoru rolled his eyes. "It's nearly impossible to get lost when using the cable car," he argued, but the man remained cautious, insisting on the potential for mishaps. With a resigned sigh, Kotoru joined the couple, silently following them as they walked along the track. He bought a box of snacks when they offered him food, trying to shake off his irritation. As they strolled, he pointed out the well-constructed features of track number 1, highlighting the stores and bathrooms. "This place is perfect for sightseeing," he explained, his voice gaining enthusiasm. "Look over there. That's the monkey park, and just beyond it is the Good Luck Octopus. Did you know cars can also pass through this track?" The couple walked behind him, snapping pictures as he guided them through the attractions. Kotoru felt a flicker of pride as he shared his knowledge, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of unease. After passing the temple, he noted, "Just follow the path to the summit. It's a beautiful view from up there." He was about to elaborate when the woman interrupted. Her curiosity piqued. "You seem to know a lot about this place. Have you researched it?" Kotoru shrugged, trying to downplay his knowledge. "Not really. I just grew up here." The man chimed in. "Kotoru has spent his life here. The locals of Heioi often visit the mountain, even for school trips." The woman, satisfied with the explanation, turned to Kotoru. "But why don't you seem happy to be back? You just moved back, right?" Kotoru hesitated, the weight of his memories pressing down on him. "I don't have good memories associated with this place," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Just then, a strong wind whipped through the area, nearly knocking them off their feet. The man quickly checked on his wife, while Kotoru stared off into space, murmuring, "This is the place where a Tengu kidnapped me." The couple exchanged concerned glances as they reached the temple. "What do you mean?" the woman asked, her voice laced with curiosity. "What happened?" Kotoru took a deep breath, the memories flooding back. "It was very mysterious. I don't remember much about the incident, only stories from my relatives." The man leaned in, intrigued. "Did you lose your memories because of the shock?" Kotoru nodded slowly. "My body seems to remember." As Kotoru sat alone on a bench, the warm breeze rustled the leaves around him, but it felt as if the mountain itself wanted to stop him from returning here later. His thoughts swirled around the strangeness of the incident from elementary school. He couldn't recall anything about being lost in the mountains, but a nagging feeling told him someone had intentionally covered up those memories. He sensed he had visited this place before, and remembered crying out of fear. Curiosity gnawed at him about how he had been rescued, but he reassured himself that it was probably for the best he couldn't remember, as it must have been a traumatic experience. Suddenly, the couple returned, their laughter breaking through his reverie. Yet, Kotoru felt something strange as blurry memories of a girl surfaced in his mind. The couple continued discussing Tengu and their similarities to yokai, the man mentioning that the god here was also a Tengu, assuming Kotoru knew this. They talked about two statues, one of a man with a long nose and another with a beak, while admiring the beautiful leaves. As they spoke, Kotoru recalled someone mentioning the names of trees and plants, and a realization hit him. He had met someone here before. Without thinking, he started running ahead, his heart racing as he stood on the edge of a small cliff. The path ahead felt familiar, and as he descended, a branch cut his cheek, triggering a flashback. He remembered being at the same spot with someone else, a girl whose face was just out of reach in his memory. He took a step forward, but his foot got tangled in a branch, almost causing him to fall. Turning around, he came face to face with a giant wolf and a girl wearing a bird mask. Kotoru stared in shock as the girl warned him not to come here, saying, "There can't be a third time." Before he could process what was happening, he found himself sitting on the temple stairs, the couple looking at him with concern. The man asked if something was wrong, but Kotoru dismissed him, lost in thought about the girl from his memories. Back at home, he cooked dinner while glancing at the compass in his hand, its needles spinning erratically. Late at night, a sense of urgency washed over him, and he decided to return to the mountain. As he stepped outside, he was surprised by how dark it was, a stark reminder of how scary it must have been for a child. With each step forward, he felt a deep sense that he couldn't remember something very important, and that he needed to meet someone here. Suddenly, his foot slipped, and he fell into a ditch. The accident triggered another flashback, and he remembered crying because of his injuries, sitting beside a giant dog. A young girl approached him, her eyes filled with concern. "Have you been crying for long?" she asked softly, kneeling beside him. She offered to see his injured hand, and despite her concern, she effectively healed his wound. Kotoru finally stopped crying, feeling a warmth spread through him as she smiled. "Let's go get some medicine," she suggested, and for the first time, he saw her beautiful face clearly, framed by the soft glow of the setting sun. Back in the present, Kotoru jolted awake to find the girl from his childhood sitting in front of him. Kotoru stared at the girl, his mind racing as he took in the small wings on her back. She looked worried about his injuries, but he was too entranced by the sight of her to respond. When he remained silent for several moments, she waved her hand in front of his face. Concern etched on her features. "Did you hit your head or something?" Before she could finish, Kotoru interrupted, his voice urgent. "Were you the one who rescued me in the past?" Without waiting for an answer, he recounted how he had gotten separated from his school group and had fallen beside the giant dog. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. "You still remember me?" Kotoru quickly took her hand, his heart racing as he repeated everything that had happened that day. Startled, she asked, "Do you remember our promise?" Seeing his blank expression, her face fell, and she began to scream at him. "How could you come back after I warned you? I told you not to return for the third time." Her words echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the past. Her agitation deepened as she asked, "Do you know the rules of the village?" Kotoru stared at her, clueless. She struggled to explain what it meant for two people who met 3 times under the sacred tree. A deep blush coated her cheeks as she suddenly hugged him tightly. "Those who meet under this tree must get married in a sacred house." Kotoru's mind reeled at her words, but before he could process them, the scene shifted around him. Suddenly, he found himself at a lively party filled with people wearing bird masks, celebrating and indulging in food. Amidst the revelry, Kotoru sat with a solemn expression, unnoticed as everyone else was absorbed in feasting and discussing Haim's upcoming marriage. A masked man poured drinks for him, and Kotoru apologized for zoning out, only to be reprimanded. "You shouldn't be saying sorry. You're the groom." Confused, Kotoru tried to piece together how he had ended up in this situation. Another man complimented his looks, while another remarked on the surprise of Haim choosing a human, speculating about the potential for them to have a tall son. Kotoru struggled to remember events after slipping from the cliff, but the memories were elusive. Just then, Haim burst into the scene, scolding everyone for organizing a banquet without her consent. When someone complained about her tardiness, she redirected the conversation, chastising another for suggesting she should wear a Tengu mask, even though she was marrying Kotoru. "That mask is outdated," she insisted, her voice firm. As Kotoru observed the chaos, he was struck by how they were using the same banner from her birthday party. A masked man explained that a banquet was customary after such news, but Haim declared the party canceled. Complaints arose from the guests, accusing Haim of bringing a man here impulsively and insisting they were merely trying to set everything up quickly. Despite Kotoru's attempts to interject, he was ignored. Haim explained, "Kotoru has only recently regained his memories of our first meeting." An elder man stepped forward, his voice steady and authoritative. Haim is not yet ready for marriage, he declared, noting that they had met 3 times under the sacred tree. He revealed that Haim had expressed eagerness to marry the human, and the crowd murmured in surprise. Haim blushed at this exposure, but reluctantly admitted the truth, her gaze dropping to the ground. The crowd then turned their attention to Kotoru, bombarding him with questions about his background and career. "What do you do? Where are you from?" they asked, their curiosity palpable. Haim attempted to intervene, but her efforts went unheard. Finally, Kotoru spoke up, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I hail from Heioi, work as a system engineer, and I'm currently single with no desire to marry." He paused, glancing at Haim. "I thank Haim for rescuing me, but I'm not bound by your village rules and will apologize if I have inadvertently broken one." Before he could finish, an old woman interrupted, her voice sharp. "You cannot do that." Haim tried to calm her grandmother, but the elder warned Kotoru about the consequences of disobeying their traditions, especially concerning Haim. The woman's eyes narrowed as she leaned in closer, her expression fierce. Their protective gesture, Haim stepped in front of Kotoru, defending him. "He's merely struggling to recall everything," she asserted, her voice firm. Confusion flickered across her grandmother's face, prompting Haim to reassure her. "I will help Kotoru regain his memories, I promise." Acknowledging the village rules, she requested some private time with Kotoru. Once they found a quiet moment away from prying eyes, Kotoru expressed his ignorance about the village's customs. "I don't understand any of this," he admitted, frustration creeping into his voice. Haim interrupted him, returning his mobile phone. "Let's escape through the sky while everyone is preoccupied with drinking," she suggested, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "We need to find some shoes for you." Kotoru, still bewildered, questioned her desire to marry him. "I'm not interested in marriage," he reiterated, shaking his head. Haim's expression softened as she reminded him, "You have no real memories. Remember how you once chased me, calling my name?" Kotoru paused, a flicker of recognition sparking in his mind. "I can recall that," he admitted, and Haim's smile deepened. "You must have a family to protect," she added, her tone wistful. A moment of reflection passed between them, and Haim suddenly apologized. "I'm sorry for bringing you into this chaos." Just then, she found his shoes and realized he didn't have a wallet. Kotoru searched his pockets, only to discover that his compass was missing. "I can't believe it's gone," he muttered, frustration mounting. Haim speculated that someone may have picked it up, and their conversation was interrupted when a group of children ran by, giggling and commenting on the presence of a human. As Haim's wings fluttered with excitement, she turned to Kotoru. "Do you have a small enchanted compass?" Kotoru reached out to touch her wings, surprised to find they were real and moved under his fingertips. The sensation sent a jolt of warmth through him, and he couldn't help but blush at the attention he was giving her. Haim suddenly asked Kotoru, "Aren't you afraid to touch a Tengu's wings?" Kotoru hesitated, his heart racing. "I am scared," he admitted, the weight of her question hanging in the air. But their moment was cut short when they heard footsteps approaching. Haim quickly ushered him into a nearby room, and they hid behind the door, holding their breath. Through the thin walls, they overheard a group of Tengu criticizing Haim for showing her face to a human. "She should focus on her duties as a leader instead of bringing in an outsider," one of them said, their tone dripping with disdain. Once the corridor fell silent, Haim murmured, "Those Tengu will be held accountable for their disrespectful comments." Kotoru was surprised to learn she was the leader, thinking it was her grandmother who held that title. Haim explained, "My family, including my parents and grandparents, were leaders before they passed away. The villagers raised me, but I feel irritation toward their traditional views." Suddenly, her expression brightened. "Kotoru, what do you think about shorter hakama? Would they be cuter?" Without waiting for a response, she rambled on about how masks were an outdated tradition that ruined her hair. Kotoru hesitantly agreed. "It's easier to communicate without masks." And Haim's face lit up with delight. She then changed the topic, asking about the device she had returned earlier, calling it a smartphone. When she correctly identified it, her pride shone through. "I know about tablets and computers," she exclaimed, her excitement infectious. Kotoru listened in fascination as she explained how climbers often lost their devices, and she collected them from the cliffs. Haim's fascination with the outside world grew as she described people enjoying life, eating, taking pictures, and being with loved ones. Kotoru recalled what the other Tengu had said about her, feeling a mix of admiration and concern. Haim continued, lamenting how she couldn't use the devices since they were password protected, and there was no electricity in the village. Being the village leader means I must marry and bear children for the village's sake, she said, frustration evident in her voice. But I want to experience life outside. She stood up, apologizing for her rants and promising to fetch her compass from the other room. Kotoru tried to stop her, but she rushed off alone, leaving him to contemplate the voices outside. He speculated whether Haim was genuinely getting married or planning to flee. As he listened, he overheard a conversation about the strict rules governing her marriage and the expectation for her to bear children for the village's sake. The weight of those expectations pressed down on him, and he felt a surge of protectiveness for Haim. In a serene clearing, Haim advised Kotoru to breathe deeply if he was scared, assuring him he wouldn't fall. "Just don't look down if you're afraid of heights," she said with a playful smile. Kotoru asked, "Why hasn't anyone followed us?" "They're still celebrating," Haim explained, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She presented the compass to him, but instead of handing it over, she clutched it tightly. "This is a protection charm I made for you because I know you treasure it," she said softly. With a serious expression, she wished him health and asked him to take care of himself before turning to leave. Kotoru hesitated, voicing his concern about her potential punishment for breaking the rules. Haim reassured him, "I haven't faced severe consequences yet. I'll be fine." Before Kotoru could voice his concerns, Haim's grandmother warned her of the dangers in defying tradition. But with a smile, Haim insisted, "This is my issue, and you shouldn't worry about it." Kotoru thought deeply, declaring, "It doesn't concern me what rules this place follows. You have the right to defy them. You deserve to live life as you choose." Haim was taken aback, her eyes widening as she considered the implications. "But if I refuse to marry, my family line could end," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Kotoru maintained his stance. "It's acceptable for you to prioritize your own happiness. While I respect your family, you should still escape to experience life." Haim's expression began to warm to the idea. "Will I get to wear Western clothes and shop in modern stores?" she asked, her excitement bubbling to the surface. When Kotoru affirmed this, her enthusiasm grew. "What about exploring cities and riding trains?" she continued, blushing at the thought. "I can't wait to wear sneakers, try new foods, and walk on the beach." Her excitement was infectious, and as she held his hand, she declared, "We should enjoy all these experiences together." Kotoru was stunned by this unexpected proclamation. "Wait, I didn't invite you to live with me," he protested, but Haim ignored his objections. With a sudden burst of energy, she picked him up by the collar, insisting, "We must inform everyone about my decision." Before he could react, she flew through the air, bringing him back to the banquet hall. "I will live with Kotoru as his wife," she announced, her voice ringing with joy. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Kotoru was still trying to grasp the situation. Haim continued to chatter excitedly about their future together, and he felt a mix of frustration and confusion. "You should follow your heart, not the rules," he urged. Haim giggled, her eyes sparkling. "But my engagement to you is a way to abide by those rules since we'll be living together." Kotoru attempted to counter her logic, but he was interrupted by Haim's exuberant shout as they reached his house. She dropped him on the ground and beamed at his home, thrilled that it would be their new abode. Remembering her earlier words, Kotoru inquired about a promise he may have made her. "What was it?" he asked, but Haim refused to divulge any details. "You should ask again once you recall everything," she teased, hugging him tightly. "I'm so excited about living happily together," she exclaimed, her joy radiating off her. From that moment on, Kotoru slept peacefully on his couch, the warmth of her presence lingering in his mind. The soft sounds of the morning eventually disrupted his slumber, the ringing of his alarm pulling him from his dreams. As he slowly woke, he saw a notification reminding him to take out the trash. When he turned around, he was startled to find Haim sleeping at the table, her head resting on her arms. In her dreams, Haim mumbled about wanting more red rice, and it suddenly dawned on Kotoru that he had completely forgotten about her presence. Seeing that she was deeply asleep, he silently approached her, his fingers grazing the soft feathers of her wings. The gentle touch sparked fleeting memories of his childhood. But before he could delve deeper into those thoughts, Haim awoke with a start. "Hey, "What are you doing touching my wings while I sleep?" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. Kotoru stumbled back, hastily apologizing. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." Unfazed by his embarrassment, Haim suggested they start over. She bowed politely and insisted, "You need to take care of me since I'm unfamiliar with this new life." With that, she handed him a small box, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I want to meet your family." Frustration bubbled up in Kotoru, and he snapped at her. "I never invited you to stay in my house." Haim, undeterred, pointed out, "But you were the one who suggested I leave my village." Kotoru argued back, clarifying, "I only meant you could experience the outside world." When Haim innocently stated that she didn't know anyone else, he inquired about any Tengu communities. She explained, "The other Tengu live in the mountains, which would feel similar to living in the village." Although he agreed with her reasoning, Kotoru still insisted she should reconsider her decision and return to her village. Ignoring his protests, Haim began unpacking her belongings. When he objected, she explained, "The villagers already believe I'm marrying you, so going back is not an option." Reluctantly, Kotoru conceded, allowing her to stay for a few days. But Haim refused to accept this temporary arrangement. She chatted casually about her things, asking where she should place her belongings. Then she pulled out a jar and called for something to come out. Kotoru was taken aback when a fox suddenly emerged from the small pot, staring at him with bright, curious eyes. He listened in shock as Haim excitedly explained how she had many items stored in the jar. "Look, I even have sweets from the village," she said, offering him some. Kotoru was still stunned and asked, "How did you accomplish this? Do you possess powers as a Tengu?" Haim blushed slightly, saying, "You can call it magical powers, but I'm not particularly talented since I'm a Karasu Tengu." Suddenly grabbing her hand, Kotoru marveled at her abilities, observing how light appeared to emanate from her palm. Your powers are amazing," he praised, but Haim pulled her hand away teasingly. "Do you enjoy touching others?" Kotoru hastily apologized, but she reassured him, "It's just my hand." Turning slightly away, she asked, "Do you find my body appealing?" He told her not to phrase it that way, but Haim ignored his discomfort, standing up to fetch her cleaning supplies. Once again, Kotoru was surprised by her magic as she unveiled her cleaning tools, proudly asserting, "I'm a good wife." She showed off a dust cloth and a small broom, her enthusiasm infectious. Kotoru felt a mix of admiration and discomfort. Kotoru urged Haim to relax, but this only frustrated her. "I can't be a good wife by being lazy," she argued, her determination shining through. Skeptical about her cleaning knowledge due to her leadership background, he suggested, "You wouldn't know how to clean properly." Offended, Haim shot back, "I remember running around with a mop as a child. You can't clean tatami rooms in circles." Kotoru dropped the argument, realizing it was futile. Instead, he handed her a vacuum cleaner, explaining how it worked. "Just give it a try," he encouraged. Haim's eyes widened in astonishment. "It uses electricity?" she exclaimed, her curiosity piqued. When she pressed the button, the vacuum roared to life, and she joyfully cheered as it started moving across the floor. Kotoru couldn't help but smile slightly at her excitement. "Now let's tackle the laundry," he said, preparing to leave the room. But as he turned to go, he overheard Haim deciding to clean the back room first. He quickly turned around, telling her, "You don't need to clean that room." But she had already opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of books piled high. "Are all these yours?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Kotoru replied, "They belong to my late grandfather." Haim stepped inside, enchanted by the collection. She excitedly picked out a book about yokai, beaming as she commented, "You must really like yokai since all the books are about them." Kotoru attempted to deny it, but Haim teased him about his interest, leading her to wonder, "Is this why you find my body fascinating?" Kotoru sighed, repeating, "The books are my grandfather's." Still smug, Haim expressed her desire to showcase her powers to Kotoru's grandfather, believing he would be impressed. However, when she turned around, she found that Kotoru had already left the room. Peeking out the door, she called his name, but he merely responded, "I'm going to do laundry. The library room is dirty, so you should take off your socks before entering." Haim was surprised to learn that he had recently moved back to the house. Realizing her mistake, she apologized for assuming he had always lived there. Kotoru hesitated before finally telling her, "I grew up in an orphanage." Haim's expression fell as she processed this information. I lost my family too, she shared softly, but I was always supported by my village. Kotoru explained, I had no one to look after me, casually noting, a child can't live alone. He didn't think much of it until he saw her somber expression. Did you feel alone? She asked, her voice gentle. Kotoru shrugged, not wanting to dwell on it. I never thought of it that way, he replied, not liking the pity in her gaze. He was about to shift the topic when Haim suddenly pointed out, my socks are dirty. Determined, she stood up. I'll do the laundry instead. Kotoru tried to dissuade her, but she insisted. I can handle it. When he attempted to argue again, Haim declared, I'll take charge of the laundry and clean from now on. I vow to wake you in the morning and prepare food for you. Kotoru stared in disbelief as Haim took control of the situation, her enthusiasm and determination leaving him both bewildered and slightly amused. Kotoru tried to intervene, but Haim paid him no mind, rushing to his room to grab his laundry. He felt a wave of relief wash over him at having avoided the embarrassment of her washing his underwear. With a basket in hand, he headed toward the washroom and called out to Haim, asking if she could use the washing machine. As he opened the door to the washroom, he was startled to find Haim changing clothes. He quickly slammed the door shut, his heart racing. What's wrong with you? He yelled through the door. Haim casually explained, I'm just changing out of the clothes I wore yesterday. I want to wash my undergarments. Kotoru yelled back, You need to warn me next time. He realized he was the one who had opened the door without thinking. Haim peeked out, now dressed in her robe, and inquired about his laundry. Kotoru shut the door again, exasperated. Don't come out wearing your kimono underwear. Haim looked confused, believing she was fully dressed. Meanwhile, Kotoru struggled to comprehend why she reacted so strongly when he touched her wings. Later, as he sat in his living room, he concluded that he truly needed to find a way to send Haim back to the mountains. Sitting around the table, Kotoru and Haim enjoyed their meal when a loud growl from Haim's stomach broke the calm. Annoyed, Kotoru asked, Why are you still hungry? You're on your 5th manju. Haim retorted, It's not my fault, I'm still hungry. Standing up, Kotoru pointed out, You can't fill up on manju alone. Unfortunately, there was nothing else in the fridge. Peering inside, he sighed, lamenting his lack of food. I guess I'll have to head to the convenience store, he decided. Just then, Haim spotted a noodle packet on the side and expressed her desire to eat that. Kotoru warned her, The noodles won't taste as good as they look on the packaging. Do you like ramen? Haim asked, her eyes lighting up. Kotoru nodded. Yeah, but it's not the same as what you see in the commercials. Haim's excitement bubbled over as she shared. I've seen people eating it in the mountains. I know it just requires hot water. Can I prepare it myself? Kotoru nodded, starting to prepare the instant noodles while telling her not to get too excited. However, Haim watched him in awe as he boiled water. Sensing her enthusiasm, he invited her to join in the cooking. Confused but eager, she chose the same flavor as him, and they both approached the stove. Kotoru guided her to open the lid halfway, and her heart raced with excitement. She gasped at the sight of the dried ingredients, her face flushing with anticipation. Kotoru chuckled, instructing her to fill the cup with water up to the line. When Haim struggled to find the line, he pointed it out, and she finally began pouring in the water. As the ingredients rose, Haim worried about spilling, but Kotoru reassured her, Everything is fine. She gazed at the filled packet in wonder, and then followed his direction to close the lid. They placed their cups in the microwave, and Haim counted down the seconds eagerly. When the microwave dinged, she jumped up, thrilled to see her noodles were ready. After confirming with Kotoru that it was time to eat, they sat back down and gave a quick thanks for the meal. Haim dove in, her eyes lighting up as she savored the noodles. These are delicious, she exclaimed, surprised by the unique flavor that differed from soy sauce. The strange wavy noodles are delightfully soft, and the meat is tender, Kotoru informed her. They're actually called Chinese-style noodles, which only fueled her enthusiasm further. Haim marveled at how something so delicious could be made just by adding hot water. As Haim's focus returned to her meal, Kotoru watched her with a tender smile. He suddenly chuckled when she asked if she could make another cup of noodles if she was still hungry. You know you enjoy eating, he teased, knowing full well how much she loved food. Haim tried to deny it, but even as she finished 3 more packets, she couldn't hide her joy. Afterward, she clapped her hands joyfully and thanked him, her eyes sparkling with delight. Kotoru reflected on how much she truly loved to eat. Closing her eyes in bliss, Haim giggled softly. "I never imagined I'd get to eat noodles after leaving my home in the mountains," she shared, reminiscing about the unique taste of soba she once had. "I'm so grateful for living in your house. Thank you for this experience." Kotoru was taken aback by her heartfelt words, his face flushing. "It's just a cup of noodles," he pointed out, feeling a bit shy under her sincere gaze. Haim insisted, "If we hadn't met, I would never have had this chance to enjoy such food. I can't wait to tell everyone how delicious it is." She envisioned sharing her discovery with the villagers, her excitement palpable. Kotoru shyly told her, "I can make more dishes for you," prompting Haim to smile brightly. She eagerly pulled out another cup of noodles, and Kotoru thought to himself that he might let her stay a while longer. Haim planned to clean the cups, intending to keep them in her collection. Once she finished eating, she quickly tidied up everything, leaving Kotoru bewildered by her determination. As Kotoru prepared a sandwich for Haim, he allowed her to help with the small tasks. Her excitement was contagious as they layered the ingredients on the bread. Once they finished, he praised her for her effort as a beginner. Haim stared at the sandwich, marveling at how it looked so amazing despite having such a scary name. After confirming that the coffee was ready, they sat down to eat. As expected, Haim couldn't help but exclaim how good everything tasted. Kotoru silently enjoyed his meal, relieved that he still had enough bread at home. While savoring her food, Haim expressed her disbelief that she was having such a delicious breakfast. "I can't wait for more food later," she said, her eyes shining with anticipation. Kotoru hesitated, and Haim, sensing his uncertainty, anxiously asked, "Will we have lunch?" His assurance that he would cook anything she wanted filled her with joy. "I'm thinking of buying some meat today," he mentioned, and her excitement was contagious. Suddenly, Haim remembered, "I need to hang the wet futons and clean the house." Kotoru pointed out that she should prepare her room and told her to bring her bag. However, Haim was not pleased with the suggestion, nearly shouting, "We already agreed to sleep in the same room." Kotoru countered, reminding her of their conversation the previous day. Undeterred, Haim smiled brightly, declaring, "I've already set up the futons. Which side do you prefer? I'm not picky." Ignoring her, Kotoru started packing the futons, prompting Haim to protest, "But I just prepared them." He insisted they would not sleep in the same room, claiming futons were uncomfortable. As he turned to walk away, Haim grabbed his shirt with surprising strength, her determination unwavering. "We're sleeping together on a futon," she insisted. Frustrated, Kotoru tossed the futons to the ground, asserting, "This will be your temporary room." Haim frowned at the distance, voicing her displeasure. Kotoru struggled internally, wanting Haim to return to her mountains, but keeping his thoughts to himself. Just then, Haim quickly shifted her focus back to the food. "Can I try it with the white sauce?" she asked eagerly. Kotoru obliged, and as she took a big bite, she commented, "This tastes sour compared to the red sauce." Kotoru couldn't help but think about how wide her mouth was as she savored the flavors. Grateful for the meal, Haim offered him a bite in return, but he hesitated at the thought of eating from a half-eaten slice. "I don't know about that," he said, wrinkling his nose. Haim insisted, "It tastes great, come on." This led to playful bickering between them, laughter filling the air. Just then, a voice from outside interrupted them. Curious, Kotoru headed to the door and found a delivery rider standing there. The man handed him registered mail and asked, "Did you move here recently?" When Kotoru confirmed that he had just arrived this month, the rider mentioned, "Someone had said so." Kotoru's confusion deepened as the rider explained that the house had been empty for a while, and he thought he might have the wrong address. "The Tasaka family once lived here," the man said, expressing happiness to see Kotoru back. This took Kotoru aback, and he thanked the man as he departed, feeling surprised that some people still remembered his family after 20 years. Returning inside, Haim watched him eagerly. "Did you receive a letter?" she asked. Kotoru suddenly became aware of how different she looked with her silver hair, golden eyes, and small wings. Panic surged through him as he quickly shut the door, frustrated with himself for forgetting how others might react to her presence. He worried about what kind of uproar this could create on social media, fearing for Haim's safety if she were to be discovered. His thoughts spiraled, imagining the consequences for her and the other Tengu, potentially leading to experimentation by humans. Haim noticed his pale expression and suggested, "You're hiding something." Kotoru brushed it off, gently patting her hair to distract her. "It's nothing. Just pay more attention to your appearance," he said, trying to steer the conversation away from his worries. He was determined to keep her hidden from the outside world. "You should prepare your bedroom," Haim protested, but Kotoru mumbled, "It will keep you safe from prying eyes." Their conversation was cut short when an old woman appeared in the doorway, staring at them. Kotoru rushed out to greet her, his heart racing. She seemed delighted to see him and tried to recall the name of her son. "I'm his grandson," Kotoru informed her, relieved that she probably didn't notice Haim. The woman apologized for her poor eyesight, mentioning how even her grandchildren teased her. Kotoru engaged in conversation, and the old woman reminisced about his childhood, sharing memories of how he loved eating watermelons with his grandmother. Her stories warmed Kotoru's heart, and he smiled as she recalled how he would devour all the ohaji his grandmother made, fondly remembering how he used to bring food to her. The conversation with the old woman filled Kotoru with nostalgia as she praised him for how much he had grown. After the brief yet heartwarming encounter, he returned inside, pocketing his compass. He found Haim sitting silently in her room, murmuring, "I like mochi too." When Kotoru agreed that they were delicious, Haim suggested, "Maybe I could make some." But then she realized her statement might not be appropriate. He gently patted her head, reassuring her that it was a good idea. Kotoru left to fetch a heater for her while Haim went back to reading. Soon after, several neighbors stopped by, bringing fresh vegetables and supplies. Kotoru felt a mix of annoyance and concern. He worried that if this continued, Haim's presence might be discovered. Suddenly, Haim's stomach growled loudly, prompting Kotoru to laugh. "Looks like someone's hungry. We should eat something," he suggested, preparing to order food. To his disappointment, he found that all the home delivery options were closed. Just as he was about to leave for the convenience store, Haim pulled out some paper menus she had found. "Can we use these?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. A wave of nostalgia washed over Kotoru as he took the menus from her, recalling how he had used them in the past. Haim eagerly requested curry udon, and despite being surprised by her choice since she had just tried it, he agreed to order. When the delivery rider arrived, he asked Kotoru if he had lived there before. When Kotoru confirmed, the man shared, "My father used to get many orders from this house. There was a boy who loved to eat mochi." Kotoru was stunned, trying to process the connection. Back inside, he opened the steaming pots of food, and Haim was immediately captivated by the aroma. "The broth smells good," she exclaimed. When she asked what he had ordered, Kotoru replied, "I'm fine with anything." As Haim admired the spread, Kotoru reflected on the writer's words. Suddenly, he remembered the flavors from his childhood. With a murmured realization, he took a bite, and the taste flooded back, eliciting a smile from Haim as she watched him enjoy his meal. Once they finished eating, Kotoru commented on how he had overeaten. Haim, however, casually stated that she was still hungry. Her big smile lit up the room as she asked, "What should we eat next?" Excitedly, she suggested they could order more food. "We'll eat a lot together from now on," she declared. Kotoru raised an eyebrow, questioning, "Is food the only thing on your mind?" Haim clarified, "I just see so many delicious things I want to try." She began to dream up all the tasty meals they could enjoy together, her enthusiasm infectious. Kotoru gathered his thoughts, preparing to tell her something important, but the moment slipped away as they continued to chat about food. The next morning, when Kotoru opened his eyes, he was met with the sight of a widely smiling Haim. Startled, he quickly sat up on the couch. "You should just use the futons instead of sleeping here." Every night, ignoring Haim's complaints, Kotoru would ask, "What are you wearing on your head?" Haim would happily point toward the table, proudly announcing, "I prepared breakfast for you." Kotoru's eyes widened as he saw the food laid out before him. "Did you make rice clumps?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Haim quickly corrected him, stating, "No, it's clearly onigiri." She added with a smile, "I'm very talented at making it." Kotoru picked up one of the rice balls, noticing how it wasn't entirely made of rice. Haim explained, "I filled them with various ingredients. I used eggs and meat along with some sauces." Excitedly, she suggested, "You should try the rice ball first." Kotoru was surprised that she had already figured out how to use the rice cooker. When he expressed his surprise, Haim replied, "I used some of your pots." even though they're different from what I'm used to at home. Hastily, Kotoru rushed into the kitchen, only to find it in complete disarray. Haim quickly defended herself, insisting, "I was trying to make miso soup, but I couldn't find the ingredients." When Kotoru pointed to a dirty pot and questioned her about it, Haim insisted, "I was merely trying to make the soup myself." He then asked her how she planned to deal with the mess, but before she could answer, he told her, "You don't even need to cook." Haim innocently replied, "I haven't done anything to be a good wife while living in your house, so cooking is the least I can do to learn." Kotoru reassured her, "It isn't written anywhere that a good wife must cook." She looked confused by his strange statement, prompting him to explain, "Everything has become easier these days." He pulled 2 packets from the refrigerator and told her to put the ingredients in a bowl. Following his instructions, she added hot water, and to her surprise, they ended up with a delicious miso soup. Kotoru beamed with pride as Haim remarked, "It's like cup ramen, it smells just like the real thing." As they ate, Kotoru was pleasantly surprised by the taste of Haim's rice balls. After breakfast, he told her that he was going out and warned her not to leave the house under any circumstances. While shopping for groceries, he found himself worrying about her. When someone invited him out for drinks, he declined, reflecting on how he had bought a lot of supplies for both of them. This unexpected behavior confused him. He never intended to marry her. Upon returning home, his thoughts were interrupted when he saw Haim sitting outside with an old lady. Panic surged through him as he rushed over, scolding her for leaving the house. Haim happily explained that the old lady had brought dango for Kotoru, having remembered his fondness for red bean paste. He started to usher her inside, but halted when the old lady mentioned he must be planning to marry Haim. Delighted by the implication, Haim chimed in, "I'm practicing to be a good wife." Before Kotoru could respond, the grandma brought up her granddaughter, and Haim giggled at the thought. The conversation then turned to a candy shop, and Kotoru couldn't hold back any longer. "Aren't you curious about Haim's wings?" he asked the old lady. The grandma brushed it off, thinking it was just a trend among young people. Kotoru felt a wave of relief wash over him, thankful for her poor eyesight, which allowed her to overlook how real Haim's wings appeared. However, his relief was short-lived when he spotted a delivery rider staring at Haim's wings in astonishment. Quickly, Kotoru pushed Haim inside to prevent any further complications. "Sorry," he called out to the rider, claiming, "We're filming something for my website." Once the coast was clear and the old lady left, Kotoru stormed into the room, chastising Haim for leaving the house. "You can't just go outside like that," he exclaimed. Haim explained, "The grandma wanted to give you dango. It's okay if people see me. I often meet humans on the mountain." Kotoru argued, "This place is different from the mountains. You still don't understand human society." He worried about the potential problems if anyone were to capture her image and expose her village. Haim tried to apologize, but he cut her off, suggesting, "Maybe you should just return to the mountains." He regretted bringing her here, feeling overwhelmed by the burden of her presence. Haim hugged him tightly, saying, "I don't want to go back." Kotoru brushed her off, insisting, "You didn't heed my warnings." Conflicted about the future, he felt she was a burden, urging her to go back home. Haim quietly apologized and retreated to her room. As the day wore on, Kotoru became increasingly anxious about her well-being since she hadn't eaten or drunk anything. Just as he was about to check on her, the door opened, and Haim emerged with tear-streaked cheeks. "Can I sleep in the same bed with you one last time before I return home?" she asked softly. Unable to deny her request, Kotoru agreed. Later that night, as he lay in bed, he reflected on their earlier conversation. He had set their futons far apart, but worried that Haim might be uncomfortable. However, she reassured him, "It's fine as long as we're in the same room." Breaking the silence, Haim asked, "Are you still awake?" When Kotoru confirmed he was, she quickly apologized for her selfish request. "I feel like I've been a burden," she lamented. "I've been too focused on myself without considering what you're going through." Kotoru turned to her, surprised by her self-reflection. Haim cherished the time they spent together, vowing to remember these few days fondly. Ever since arriving in this world, she had been captivated by everything around her, realizing that it was all the more special because she was with Kotoru. She thanked him for showing her this world and asked him to take care of himself when she was gone. After she fell asleep, Kotoru stared at her back, pondering how long it had been since he had shared his life so intimately with someone. The next morning, Haim woke to find Kotoru already busy in the kitchen. Surprised to see him cooking, she hesitantly asked, "Do you need my help?" Kotoru explained, "Cooking is natural for me since I've lived alone for so long, but I just haven't felt like it." They began to eat together, and Kotoru apologized for shouting at her the previous day. He confessed, "Even though it's good for you to stay, it could also put you in danger." Despite being the one who suggested she come here, Haim quickly reassured him, "You're a good person who always cares for me and others." She acknowledged that her actions had been selfish, complicating things for him. Kotoru ignited a lie about her being a burden. In truth, he had enjoyed her company. He had never imagined living with someone else, and he found it nice. This led him to think that she could continue living with him. When Haim tried to respond, Kotoru interrupted her, urging her to forget about marriage and village rules for the moment. He expressed his desire for her to live the life she wanted, promising to help her with everything. He contemplated how she could remain safe while living here, declaring, "I will cook for you every day and take you out to explore when possible." He took on the responsibility of their situation, acknowledging that she might find it hard to believe him because he had hurt her before. "If you wish to stay and experience this life, you can do so without me," he said gently. He also warned her that this house wasn't perfect and that she would need to endure harsh weather. Suddenly, he panicked as Haim burst into tears. "I'm so sorry for making you cry," he exclaimed, quickly trying to comfort her. Haim admitted to being selfish and asked, "Can I really stay?" She expressed her fondness for the house and her desire to be with Kotoru. He confirmed, "You can stay, but you must follow my instructions until I can find a solution to our issues." After they settled everything, Haim resumed eating her food with a smile. Kotoru jokingly mentioned, "There are plenty of good guys around, and you can leave whenever you find a lover." Haim blushed, saying, "You're the first to mention such things." She refused to disclose what she should say, adding, "I'll wait for you to regain your memories."